I have come here to chew bubblegum and kick ass. And I'm all out of bubblegum.
Hi there, welcome back to Paranormal Blip. It is a pleasure being with you again. And first of all, I must apologize for the weeks and weeks and weeks of zero content from me. Basically, what happened was, there's no big conspiracy theory about it. It's just that I started a new job. And so all of my efforts were focused on the getting my head around a new job, basically. That was it, wasn't it? Remember the last time I said, oh yeah, the old job was really good and the new job people had to be, get their ducks in order. Well, they did get their ducks in order, and I'm very much enjoying my new job. Thank you very much. But it does mean that there was a large gap between episode 52 and this episode 53. And, well, what an extraordinary time it's been. So I thought the logical way of kind of bridging that large gap would be for me to do a bit of a top five. Yes, a well-worn and some would say cliched format to catch us up with what it is that we have missed in the world of the paranormal, mainly UAPs. But we're going to look at that in a second. But first of all, I'm going to then talk to you about the rest of the content for this episode. Top five coming up, kind of replacing the news. And then we've got a brief review of John Carpenter's film from the mid-80s called They Live, starring Rowdy Roddy Piper. And then I'm going to end with a couple of words on Donald Hoffman. And I'm going to link to the outstanding, it's not one, it's not the only one, but it's the one I saw yesterday. It's an interview with Kurt from Theories of Everything, and it's really good. And there's lots and lots of brilliant Hoffman stuff out there. But I just wanted to put a bit of a focus, a bit of a spotlight on Hoffman, on the Hoffmeister. And so that's the plan. Okay, what do you think about that? Hey, that's the plan. So welcome to my bistro. It's not bistro, it's bistro. And isn't it nice to hear this again? So before we get underway today, I'm going to just quickly say, please rate the podcast. You can do that on Spotify now. So go on then, give it 5 golden stars, why don't you? And also on Apple Podcasts, you can rate it there. And please review, and please subscribe, and please share, and please follow me on Paranormal Blip on Twitter, Paranormal Blip, Paranormal_Blip_ podcast at Instagram. Okay, so top 5. In the world of UAPs and the paranormal, it's been quite an exciting couple of weeks. And looking back on it, the Gillibrand conversation with Kirkpatrick, that doesn't even make the top 5. How exciting is that? What it does, though, is that it does get awarded a commendation from me. So what I want to say about that is that I thought it was extraordinary that Kirkpatrick was, saying one thing, to that open hearing, that open discussion with a couple of them, Gillibrand and a couple of her colleagues. And at the same time, it was being kind of rebuffed by, or what's the word, answered by folks who have given much more details to Kirkpatrick. So it's very interesting, this kind of public face that he has. But as we'll come on in a moment, because he did make an appearance at NASA, and I think he said something absolutely extraordinary, actually, which has been kind of picked up by a couple of people, but we'll look at that in a minute. But in terms of the Gillibrand conversation, the hearing that he had, the only thing that stuck out for me was the lack of care, seemingly, that he had for the folks that him and his team were talking to. So he was saying, well, thanks very much for the referrals of people that have inside information about this, but go easy, kind of filter them first of all before you give them to me, because I'm a very busy man, essentially, is what he was saying. And I am paraphrasing, but not by much, so I thought that was a little bit much. Kirkpatrick. Okay, so into the top 5. Number 5 is an interview that Rogan did with James Fox. This was quite a while ago now, and it was really brilliant. James Fox did a fantastic summary of the whole of UAP history from the 40s on, talking about really interesting cases. Also spoke about moment of contact, obviously. And now this is the thing I want to say about this. I'll put a link in, but I'm sure most of you have heard it by now. But if you haven't, it's definitely worth listening to the whole interview. And hats off to James Fox, who's in Britain at the moment. So welcome to Britain, James. And hats off to you, James, because you did an absolute standout job representing the UAP community, which is what he said. I am going to represent you all. Well, you did with aplomb. So congratulations, James. Now, the interesting thing to come out of that is this extraordinary story of the Chuck Clark video, which is of it was two. I think I've spoken about this in the past on the podcast, and you probably know about it. Maybe not, though. So let's just summarize very briefly. Long time ago now, I'm not too sure when. I think it was the early 90s or something like that. Two guys who were on a road trip to Area 51 videoed an extraordinary craft very close to them, about like a 50 foot up in the air. It was flying, kind of hovering in the air, and it had this red, kind of extraordinary, beautiful red, orangey luminescence about it. And James then saw that video. That video was then given to this UFO researcher who lives in that Area 51 area in Nevada. And his place was raided by the FBI not so long ago, by the way. That George Knapp is kind of reported that. And anyway, yeah, so the video was given to Chuck Clark, and Chuck then showed this video to James Fox. And this was a long time ago. And James Fox, I don't know if it was last year. It was certainly recently, because I remember speaking about it. He did an interview where he spoke about this, and he said, it's the most compelling footage I've ever seen. I've no way of verifying it, but you'd need a massive amount of a budget in those days to kind of do visual effects on it, to make it look as good as it looked. So then this was kind of discussed, and then Logan Paul got in contact with. Logan Paul is this like a YouTuber, podcaster. I also think he fights as well. He's like a fighter, professional fighter. And yeah, I'm not really into that kind of thing. So anyway, Logan Paul heard about this. He went down, and this is what we know about this because James Fox told the world this through the Rogan podcast, not Logan but Rogan, and not Dolan either, not Richard Dolan, and not Gary Nolan, no. So anyway, he told the world about this through the Rogan podcast, and he said that Logan Paul had gone down and secretly filmed using a kind of camera in his buttonhole, like some kind of Mission Impossible cameo. secretly filmed this television that was playing the VHS tape from back in the day. And so Logan then spoke about this on his podcast a couple of weeks later, and he said at some point he's going to kind of like release it, maybe. So it's very odd, very, very odd. I think if you've got it, you should just kind of give it to the world. I think that Chuck Clark, I mean, I don't know what is going on with Chuck Clark. Like, if you're personally, when people bother to find you and go around your house, then you get to see it. Do you know what I mean? So he showed like another guy, a private investigator, it. So he said now in an interview that somebody took, he said that he no longer has it. It's not in his possession anymore. And there's a bit of speculation as to what that means. Like, has it been kind of taken by, I don't know, the FBI, or has he sold it to someone? It's not we're not too sure what that means. But anyway, Logan Paul is sitting on this footage, and so we'll see what happens with that. Anyway, that's why it's top 5. The interview itself is absolutely brilliant, but it's been quite a busy week. So James, if you're listening, I'm sorry that you're in the number 5, but at least it's at least you're in there. There's lots of stuff that's happening, isn't it? It was a long time ago, but I really did want to say something about it because, James, it was a brilliant interview. So that's number 5. Number four, Corbell and Knapp weaponized a couple of weeks ago. This has been a massive story. A couple of weeks ago, Jeremy Corbell spoke about this mass sighting that happened a couple of years ago in this place called 29 Palms. 29 Palms. Do you remember that song? Oh, I love it. Robert Plant. 29 Palms. La 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 la. And I hear your voice on the radio. La 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 la. What is it? Anyway, it's a really good song. And so this has been a big story. Essentially, and it's worth watching Weaponized, by the way, the episode a couple of weeks ago, and then the most recent episode, which came out last Tuesday, I think. Yeah, so 6 days ago. So here's the score, man. Apparently, Corbell lives around this area in California. 29 Palms, and he heard quite soon after the event, I think, like very soon after the event, he heard that something had happened. And he heard this from multiple people. And then his job then was to work out, well, what happened? And so he worked it out. And lots of people got in contact with him, okay? And the podcasts are full of these audio of people, like him interviewing witnesses. What they witnessed was a large triangular craft for at least 10 minutes. Somebody said 35 minutes. So between 10 to 35 minutes, basically there. And at one point, some witnesses say that it shifted slightly. But apart from that slight shift that some people say, it was totally still. Okay? Now, 29 Palms is this massive training area. And there's thousands of people in the army, thousands of Marines, like set there, like based there all the time. You've got this kind of running rota of people coming in, doing training, leaving again. So it's like a busy, very busy place. Lots of things going on. It's absolutely huge. Now we found out, not like the UFO community found out through a little bit of research that there was a training happening that night, and the training that night involved having flares sent up. So that was enough for a lot of people in the UFO world to say, oh, but it was flares, it was flares, it was flares. Now, some of those people I can instantly dismiss and ignore. But then other people who I do kind of take seriously were thinking, well, hold on a minute, was it like, what is going on here? Like, what other information do we have except for the witnesses? Okay, now we've got to take note that a lot of these witnesses were saying they were not flares. They were specifically saying they weren't flares. Some of those witnesses that were saying they were not flares were people that send flares up in their job. Do you know what I mean? So, Knapp in the most recent episode of Weaponized says, well, we may have new flares that we don't know about, So it is possible that, basically it's an open investigation. It's an ongoing investigation, and anything is possible, It is possible that it's flares, okay? Quote me on that. I'm saying it is possible that it's flares. But it is also possible that 50 plus people they're in the, armed services, they know about things that fly around. They're like observers, they're trained observers, all of them are, And so you have to kind of think they might know what they're talking about when they're saying it's not flares, It's not just one guy saying that. Lots of people are saying it's not flares. We could see a craft, even though most of the photographs don't show a craft. There was one photo, they said, don't show a craft. We could see a craft when we were looking at it in the sky. We were saying, what the hell is that? We don't say that about flares because we know flares. We work with flares. We've seen flares before. And you kind of think, okay, on a basis whereby you have to take witnesses seriously, you can't just say, well, it might be that they are saying it's not flares. It might be that they're saying that it is a craft, but come on, it must be flares, I'm not too interested in going down that road. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to refer to, I'm just looking it up on Twitter actually, I'm going to refer to a photograph that was taken in low light conditions. Some guys got a really good camera, and he took a really interesting, really good photograph. And you could see in the photo very clearly that it's, it's a craft. You can see a triangle craft there. And so what's going on there? Some people say that it isn't a craft at all, that it's some kind of effect of the flares falling. But then you think, well, hold on a minute, these aren't falling flares. This thing stayed still for 10 minutes, except for some people are saying, well, actually, it kind of, blipped a little bit. They don't use the word blip. I wish they did, because it'd be good for me if they did, but I'll use the word blip. But it kind of like it's moved very, very slightly. Some people are saying that. So we're not too sure what's going on with this. But if you take a look at the photograph, which I'll link, then you can see very clearly that there is a craft. There is a triangle shape. Now, if that triangle shape is, kind of related to some kind of effect connected to the flares, then I can kind of see that. I'm not ruling it out, but at the same time, for that effect to take place, you'd imagine that the flares were actually dropping, and nobody was saying the flares were dropping. None of the witnesses were saying the flares are dropping. So you can't have it both ways. You can't say it's flares and then dismiss the triangle picture by saying the flares are dropping, whilst at the same time taking seriously the people that we know this story through, So we have evidence of a photograph. It's not a perfect photo. I'm looking at it right now, and I'll link it in the episode description. And it does look, triangle-ish. Now, it's not the best photograph ever, but these are the facts of the case. 20th of April, 2021, between 8:20 and 9:20 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Location, the Marine Corps Air Ground Combat Center, 29 Palms, Camp Wilson. Duration, approximately 10 minutes. But like I say, in the second episode of Weaponized that came out about 5-6 days ago, somebody was saying it was about 30-35 minutes. Case type, mass UFO sighting, 50 plus direct eyewitnesses. they have had that confirmed 50 plus by enough people to have it done. And by the way, in journalism, if you're writing a story and somebody tells you something, you need to verify it with one other. You need two sources, and they've got many sources for this. Yeah, and there many people are saying it's 50 plus. Some people are saying it's 80 people were there. It's difficult to say. I mean, it's a bunch of people that come out of their dorms or whatever they're called and take a look, and then some people probably drift off. Some people. So I'm not that concerned that there's no definite number on that. We've got iPhones and infrared. Now it'd be interesting to find out more about the infrared. Consensus eyewitness reports: the shape triangle by angle of observation, the sound silent, the size estimations of between half the size of a football field and a 3-bedroom 2-story house. Oh, that's a bit different. Timeline: 8:20 craft appeared. 8:24 first known iPhone recordings. 8:29 illumination rounds were discharged above the UAP craft. This was recorded. And that's very interesting footage, actually, where you can see the difference between the illumination flares that were there in order to kind of shed light on the craft, if you like illuminate the craft so people can see what the heck is going on. And then the craft lights themselves, because I should explain there are how many? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 points of light. Yep, they're kind of like quite large, white, bright white light. Bright white light. Where were we then? And then 8:30, the UAP was reported to blink out or disappear just before the illumination rounds approached useful proximity to the unidentified craft. Response: there was a significant air and ground response for approximately 3 hours after this mass sighting, presumed by witnesses to be a search and reconnaissance effort. So that is really interesting. And then it's all on this page that I'm going to link. It's a brilliant story, and it's brilliantly laid out, as you would imagine from those guys, because they know what they're doing, Jeremy Corbell and George Knapp. And I can't just dismiss it as, oh, it's just flares, but at the same time, though, obviously the more information possible, not that I need to tell Jeremy that, because of course that's what he's doing, do you know what I mean? So it's a really absolutely fantastic story. And thank you so much for giving it to us, Jeremy, and for your commentary on it, George. And hey, man, it makes you top 4. Wow, wait, that's pretty good, isn't it? Yeah, number 4. Thank you. Okay, so now we're on to the number 3 now. The top 3 is, well, they're kind of all connected, really. But number 3 is the NASA public briefing. 4 hours long. There are a couple of things that came out of it that were really positive. Okay, first of all, just a word on the negative things. It doesn't help to say, oh yeah, we saw a Bart Simpson balloon. It doesn't help to say, oh, we saw the International Space Station. It doesn't help to release footage showing planes. And it definitely doesn't help to do this calculation on the go fast to say that it was traveling at 40 miles an hour when it's not the full video and you haven't got access to the full video, and multiple people have said that it's going much faster. Okay, I mean, it's really odd that those kind of things were going on, and half of it was saying, oh, stigma, we've got to get rid of the stigma. The other half was like the FAA guy didn't even know what happens if a pilot makes a report. I mean, that's like, come on. Like, it was a really dull presentation by that dude. It basically spoke about how the FAA works, not much about UAPs. And then the most obvious question about, oh yeah, okay, so if a pilot does see a UAP, what does he do about it? He didn't even know, So that's my negative thing about that then. So some positive things happened as well, though. Number one, Kirkpatrick said that he had just come out of a the week before, a meeting with the Five Eyes, which was very exciting. And Chris Sharp tried to get a comment from the Ministry of Defence, and they said, "We do not comment. That's it. It's not a no comment. It's just that we do not comment about that. So that's it." So no movement at all from the UK MOD or the UK government on that. But it's good to get confirmation from Kirkpatrick, like on the record, public confirmation of Five Eyes. So if you're listening in Australia or Canada or New Zealand, I know I've got listeners in those places, it might be worth trying to get some kind of public comment on the record from your ministries of defense. Yes. But that was very interesting. The second interesting thing was this idea of the spheres being everywhere. I mean, this is absolutely juicy. Let's jump to Kirkpatrick in his presentation.
This is a typical example of the thing that we see most of. We see these all over the world, and we see these in making very interesting apparent maneuvers.
So there he is there, Kirkpatrick, saying we see these all over the world, and we see these making very interesting apparent maneuvers, which is absolutely extraordinary if you think about it. I mean, what is going on? What is going on? Now, we've got a bit of press coverage for that because it's such a big deal, but I mean, nothing compared to the massiveness of it, really. You've got a Department of Defense Mandarin basically confirming this extraordinary thing. And we need more information about this. Like when you say these, how many all over the world? What does that mean? They did get numbers out of like an update on the numbers. So it's 800 in total. And of those 800, roughly half of them, 400, are orbs. Okay. And so from that then, and he said between 2 and 5%. So between 16 and 40 of these 800 UAPs have got extraordinary, kind of capacity. Like there's something truly anomalous about them. Yep. They're moving in unusual ways or something like that. Yep. And then, so if you think about that, then that's one side of it. And again, it might be that, it was slightly off the cuff or slightly unprepared from Kirkpatrick to say, we see these all over the world and we see these making very interesting apparent maneuvers. It's it's intriguing because it might be that he kind of gave us a bit more than he planned for there. Because if you think, okay, you've got 8 to 16, 16 to 40, which is like the 2 to 5% of the 800 total, yeah? And then you think we see these all over the world, and we see these making very interesting apparent maneuvers. So what are we talking about? Are we talking about 10 orbs dotted around the world making apparent maneuvers, whatever that means? I imagine that they're doing things which can't be like explained easily. I mean, there's also very interestingly in Liberation Times, and I'm going to link this. There's a very good piece by some guy in the aviation industry who's kind of knows his stuff about how things fly, who's on Twitter. He's very a kind of vocal part of the UAP community. He goes by the name Condor Man. An article was written for Liberation Times that talks about the kind of possibilities of how do you how does a sphere fly? How can a sphere fly? And it's really brilliant article. And essentially, like theoretically, you can do it. Can spheres fly? Insights from a senior level aerospace engineer. Came out 23rd of April, okay? And it's really, really interesting. So essentially, it is possible. Like theoretically, it is possible. Chris Sharp has got a really great article in the Daily Mail about the Corbell, 29 Palms story as well, which is really, really very good. 29 Palms. Right, so that is number 3. And I thought it was really, really interesting what Kirkpatrick said about Five Eyes and about the spheres. And it's kind of extraordinary that that hasn't been picked up more, really. I mean, it got a bit of coverage, and the whole thing got some coverage. And of course, by and large, obviously, it's really brilliant that NASA are looking at this. And I do have qualms as to like how it kind of came together and some of the comments. But in terms of fighting the stigma, it really, really helps that NASA is on board. So hopefully you've got clear lines of reporting for anybody that sees the UAP, and hopefully some of those kind of like the legacy of the stigma will quickly fade away. Anyway, that is number 3. Okay, so number two. Number 2 is an absolutely extraordinary article that Christopher Mellon wrote for Politico. And it came out yesterday, and it's absolutely incredible. And this is when all of those people that speak about, something big is just coming around the corner. Well, big coming around. And you know what? For the subscribers of you enjoyed that episode, didn't you? Episode 5, where I talked about that. It's called Game Changer. And so, it still is that people are saying, there's something big is going to happen. And when I read this, I think, oh, yeah, this is, a kind of path to something huge. This is the path to disclosure, really. Like the path that the NASA people were talking about, that they were on a path. Well, it really feels like I'm on a path or path. I'm on a path, man. That's for the people in Liverpool that are listening. Hi. So, okay, this is Mellon. If the government has UFO crash materials, it's time to reveal them. The benefits to humanity outweigh the fear of discovering we're not alone in the universe. And it begins, I'm not going to read the whole thing, but I will link it. It begins, since 2017, my life has been dominated by efforts to help Congress and the public discover the truth about unidentified aerial phenomena, UAP, what many still refer to as UFOs. I've lost count of the number of cities visited, meetings attended, books read, articles written, media appearances, and hours spent on the phone. At the outset, my goal was simply to help our government overcome a glaring intelligence failure. And then he goes on and on and on. And then he gives some really good reasons about why the time is now. I've concluded the public needs to know the truth. I say this for the following reasons. And he writes about each of these. Democracy requires transparency. We own any discovery. We can handle it. We don't control UAP. Disclosure is only a matter of time. And there he talks about the Galileo Project, the Scientific Coalition of UAP Studies, Americans for Safe Aerospace, which is Ryan Graves' organization, and Enigma Labs as well. Congress is proceeding. Secrecy stifles science. It's time to reduce international tensions. He then goes on to quote Reagan, who very famously says, perhaps we need some, that's not Reagan, perhaps we need some outside universal threat to make us recognize this common bond. I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world. And then his next reason, Mellon's next reason, is no imminent threat. And then, although he ends that by saying, although we're not experiencing acts of aggression, there is a pattern of persistent surveillance around DoD test ranges and facilities, especially our nuclear weapons capabilities. Hopefully, any interest in our military capabilities is purely defensive. There's a lot riding on that word hopefully there, isn't there? Just like world domination. Oh, by the way, just speaking of world domination, um, the new episode is up for the subscribers, and I look at that extraordinary book, Alien Interview, by Lawrence Spencer. Do you know the story of that book? Basically, Lawrence Spencer wrote this book after he edited and kind of put footnotes, which is his research, into and kind of collated a book from this package of documents and letters sent by this woman called Matilda MacLeod. Matilda MacLeod, maybe is how you pronounce it. This Irish woman who says she was a nurse at Roswell, and she was the only one that could communicate with the alien. And the alien called themselves an ISB. And it's an absolutely extraordinary story. So I speak about that anyway in the episode 6 for the subscribers. So if you want to subscribe, then just I'll link to how you subscribe. So please do subscribe if you're interested in Paranormal Blip and listening to quite off the planet areas. I think the next subscription episode, by the way, is a bit more on Hoffman, because I'm going to speak about Hoffman in a minute, but I want to do a bit of a bigger Hoffman, celebration of the Hoff. Anyway, back to Mellon's article here. So the last one was no imminent threat, and then spark vitally needed collaboration. I cannot think of anything more likely to shock humanity out of its present complacence than the revelation we are not alone. Our species and planetary civilization is following a dangerous trajectory, one involving a serious prospect of nuclear conflagration. If that were not enough, all nations face the joint prospect of accelerating ecological devastation and the proliferation of nuclear, chemical, and biological weapons, and the threat of AI will become weaponized or turned against humanity. Okay, so that's pretty good, isn't it? I mean, it's not good, but it's good analysis, is what I mean. And then he goes on and on. So anyway, that is really absolutely extraordinary. This is another extraordinary part of it, which is being kind of widely quoted. Since Arrow was established, I've referred 4 witnesses to them who claim to have knowledge of a secret UF government program involving the analysis and exploitation of materials recovered from off-world craft. Other sources who rightly or wrongly do not trust Arrow's leadership have also contacted me with additional details and information about an alleged secret US government reverse engineering program. Some have supplied information to the intelligence community's Inspector General, others directly to staff of the Congressional Oversight Committees. So that's incredible to have that in writing. And of course, we've got words like alleged there, but at the same time, we know what he's talking about there. So, it's incredible that that's in writing. And that really does make me think that we're closing in on something absolutely huge. I mean, just around the corner, really, because if this is a path, we're coming close to the Emerald City, Well, that was a road though, wasn't it? So, yeah. Anyway, number 2. So the top 5 then. Number 5 is James Fox on John Rogan, talking about the Chuck Clark UFO video and that dude, Logan Paul. And then 4 is weaponized Flaregate, 29 palms. 50 plus people seeing it, saying it's not flares, and then everyone saying it is flares, and me saying, well, I'm not sure about it, but I would like some more data, and it probably is definitely a craft. Also, on that, what would be really great to see, and I'm sure it's the most difficult thing to see, but some kind of info about this huge response, I mean, come on, like it was only a couple of years ago. I'm sure it's possible somehow to find some verifiable, kind of evidence that big response happened, because of course, and then what they're saying as well. I mean, this isn't, this is number. I should be talking about the number one, but just quickly, they said the training that happened on that day at that time was 18 miles away and 3 mountain ranges away. That's how big this base is. It's extraordinary. So, it doesn't really. There's something that doesn't. If so many people are saying it's not flares, I think we need to kind of pay attention to that. Anyway, that's number 4. Number 3 is NASA with the Five Eyes and spheres. Number 2 is Mellon in Politico. Number 1, we know what it is because it was absolutely extraordinary. It set the UAP community on fire, and I'm not too sure if that fire has died down, but if it is, then I'm here with the kindling. Let's get this going again. Nolan at Salt. Absolutely extraordinary. Now, I'm going to play a little bit of it to you. Essentially, if you haven't heard this whole thing, then I'll put a link in the description. You got to listen to it. It is absolutely, absolutely extraordinary. And it was really well done because the guy knew exactly what Nolan was doing. The guy, the presenter, did a really standout job at asking the questions. And they obviously, he knew exactly what was coming around the corner, So, and Nolan, like typically, was absolutely brilliant at communicating his message. And what is his message? Basically, his message is that they're here and they've been here for a long time, and that there are craft, and that we are going to get material in our hands in order for us to analyze it. Not me and you, but well, maybe you. I don't know who you are. Maybe you, but certainly not me. But kind of people who can kind of verify what this stuff is. It is going to be released. So that when I hear that, and you'll hear a bit of it in a moment, you do think, we are close to something. I mean, this is disclosure. Here's Nolan.
You have to speculate. What do you think it is? Let's be bold.
I think it is an advanced form of intelligence, something that we don't understand, that is using some kind of intermediaries, however it is, like I said about you're not going to end up in the middle of the tribe, the angry monkeys that are flinging muck at each other or nuclear bombs. You're not going to show yourself in the middle of the angry. You're going to send intermediaries. It's not that they walk amongst us, that wearing a skin suit are actually the alien. Right? No, you're going to basically put something there that is, I think of it as an intelligence test. Can you see what's in front of you for what it really is? Yeah. Can you see the anomalous data point that is there that you realize what it is? I mean, when the South American native tribes first saw the Spanish ships coming across the horizon, they didn't realize what it was. They couldn't see it for what it was. So, this is, as I said before, this is the kind of the wow factor, that they're showing up, they're saying, well, who amongst you are intelligent enough to realize what it is that you're looking at? Yeah. They don't have to land on the White House lawn. We can always make the joke about, is there intelligence in DC at all, right? You just need to show yourself enough to acculturate. Yeah. Now, if you've been around for a long time, and this is something that I do think has been, they've been around for a long time, they are affecting our culture. Right? It's actually often thought that many of the religions that we think of as the most important have been part of this process.
So I zoomed in on that bit because I think it's really fascinating, this idea that, they're intermediaries. So it's not that it's you, as he points to somebody in the audience wearing a skin suit who is among us. And of course, there is a lot of testimony that does happen, by the way. Thank you. And it's not all Ingo Swann type testimony. But, that's not what he's talking about, though. He's talking about an intelligence test. Who among us, he's just said, you've just heard him say it, can pick this thing up. And what I find really fascinating is that it obviously is a connection between this thing that I've spoken to about in the past, which is spoken by many, many people, where you have folks that are, sensitives, folks that can pick things up that others can't. And in a moment, I'm going to be talking about Donald Hoffman, but it's that kind of level of and he was just spitballing there. He was saying, okay, this is the part where we speculate, and so he was just kind of speculating there. Having said that, though, this does represent something quite different in the UAP conversation, I think. Nolan, and remember as well, the audience, it wasn't a podcast, this. It wasn't like a kind of, UAP friendly gathering. It was a group of investors with money to invest. And he was saying, I'm interested in how we use this. And this is a guy that has made money by developing, healthcare products and developing companies in order to sell those healthcare products. Yep. So this is what Nolan is interested in, and this is why he was there. He wanted to, get some interest in this emerging technology. So that also is to do with the professionalization of this as an area. So there's a couple of things, like drawing it all together, a couple of things that I think are really interesting in terms of, this path towards something that is big. Maybe not I mean, what is disclosure? We're never going to see, they're never going to open up the hangar doors, as somebody once said, and you're not going to see a kind of live feed of a floating craft in Lockheed Martin's big hangar. That's not going to happen. So what is disclosure? Well, I guess it's to the point where you've got enough verifiable information where the general public knows that this is happening. So also Gary came back and he said, well, I'm not sure why it caused such a ruckus, because I've said all of this before, but I do think that he totally understands. It's not just what he said, it's the how he said it, in that it wasn't spread over a 3-hour podcast interview, and who he was saying it to as well. That is the key for me. That's the key for me, who he was saying it to. Yep. So it's to do with the professionalization of it. It's to do of the UAP phenomena, if you like, and it's to do with broadening it out and having the conversation without the stigma. And if you think back, my whole reason to begin this was to somehow help to, kind of dilute the stigma. And I do that every day in my kind of everyday talking to people about it. But we've come far. I mean, not me. I've got very little to do with it, apart from on a personal basis, the people I speak to. But we've come far, haven't we? I'd still say we. We've come far in terms of that stigma, and as much as I have qualms about the NASA thing, for instance, it's really, really good to see it getting broad mainstream media coverage. Not everywhere by a long shot. And still, we've got GMB, like Good Morning Britain, which is this big show in the UK. With the X-Files music. I mean, they've really, like, a lot of people have got to get their act together on this, in the UK especially. But of course, it doesn't help that we've got a government and a kind of, Ministry of Defense that are totally silent to that, It doesn't help at all. Anyway, to sum up, it has been an extraordinary couple of weeks. I am looking forward to be doing this a lot more regularly than, once every 2 months. I can't promise much because my job is, takes up quite a bit of time. Having said that, there's one other thing I want to say, which I do need to mention as a kind of like as a note of commendation. Christina Gomez, in relation to her coverage of the Skinwalker Ranch show, and she's really excellent. I'm a big fan of Christina. And she was in an interview with a couple of those guys from the Skinwalker Ranch. And one of them said that their insider, they've got this thing on the Skinwalker website where you can be an insider. and essentially you can kind of like chat to the dude. Is it Eric? I've forgotten his name now. Is it Eric Baird, or maybe that's someone else? But anyway, whatever his name is, you can chat to him occasionally, and occasionally other people from that group of people that run Skinwalker Ranch kind of jump into the chat. And what they do though is that they monitor the CCTV. Yep. And they've had reports, and this is very interesting. They've had reports of people on there, so like people that are on the internet at home, looking at the Skinwalker Ranch live feeds of the cameras that they've got dotted around the ranch, and they are having paranormal experiences for the first time in their lives. And the thinking is that it's some kind of entanglement. This is somebody said on the Christina's show. One of the dudes from Skinwalker Ranch said this is an example of entanglement. And I've never thought of that word in that way before, which I kind of should have done, but it is an entanglement. Yeah. When the phenomena, it seems to be that in some cases, and it's been reported by, loads of people in the past, but this is another occasion of it. When the phenomena knows that you're interested in it, it then starts taking an interest in you. It doesn't always happen. There's been plenty of researchers that have been doing this for years and years and years and never had anything, but sometimes it does happen. Yeah. So anyway, Mr. Nolan has also had, Dr. Nolan has also had his own phenomena, hasn't he? Yeah. So very, very interesting. So there's your top 5. Next, we're going to do a very quick review of They Live. They Live, 1988, John Carpenter. I think it's known as John Carpenter's They Live in some quarters. He's the director, he's the writer. And it's his response to Reagan's America, where the gap between the rich and the poor grew massively. And it was really, I remember living in Thatcher's Britain, but I don't know how old you are. Most of you are my age. So maybe you remember living in Reagan's America. And at that time, there was a big homeless crisis in Los Angeles. I think there is a big homeless crisis in many cities in the United States at the moment as well. And maybe it never went away, but certainly in the late 80s, the mid to late 80s, Carpenter wanted to address the kind of difficulty of being a working person in Reagan's America. And so it follows a character played by Rowdy Roddy Piper, the wrestler. And it's certainly Roddy Piper's most significant acting role. And he's really, really good in it, like really good. This is the first time I've seen They Live. And I was always a bit put off by Rowdy Roddy Piper. I quite liked him as a wrestler, but he certainly wasn't my favorite wrestler by a long shot. Long Shot is a good name for a wrestler, actually, isn't it? Yeah. They call me Long Shot. What do you think his arm could become elasticated and go like really long and have a massive kind of cartoon-like huge bubble fist on the end of the long elastic arm? That's a good finishing move, isn't it? Yeah. Anyway, so I was a bit put off by the idea of Rowdy Roddy Piper. He's like a proper action star, is he? He's not like Sly Stallone or Arnie Schwarzenegger, is he? He's just Rowdy Roddy Piper. But Roddy Piper's really, really good. And it's a pretty good film. I feel like it says something really interesting about the time. And I love the way that it's shot. That fight scene in the middle between him and Keith David, between Piper and Keith David, is really brilliant. And the stakes are really high. I also like Meg Foster in it, who plays the Holly character. And everyone's great. Everyone's really good in it. Having said that, it's slightly kind of clunky. I think it's fair to say that it's slightly clunky. There's one excellent thing about it, which is the sunglasses. It's a fantastic little device to get to where we're going in this film. Really clean, brilliantly used device. And essentially, what it is the story of this guy. He's kind of like a bit of a drifter, kind of, doesn't have much money, and he starts getting work at a construction site, but he's living in essentially a kind of homeless kind of area of the city, where like lots of people have just set up their tents and kind of trying to get by. Now, opposite there's a church, and he's kind of quite interested in the comings and goings of this church. And he finds, after a long kind of drawn out process, he finds these sunglasses, puts the sunglasses on, and it reveals a world that he didn't think was there. It essentially reveals the truth. Okay, this is very Don Hoffman. I'd like to have Hoffman's take on this. Yeah. So it reveals the truth. And what it does is that it shows advertising for the kind of like just ridiculousness that it is. Everything is kind of whittled down to the one word or the very short phrase that the advertising is suggesting. So as an example, obey, or have sex, or procreate, I think is the word they use. So if you take the sunglasses off, you see a beautiful, scantily clad woman selling, I don't know, a washing machine or whatever. Put the glasses on, and it says procreate. Yep, that kind of idea. So this is a kind of truth. The glasses will set you free and see the truth through the sunglasses. But also, it shows that quite a few of the population, not like everyone, but quite a lot of the population are actually aliens who are wearing some kind of human disguise. Okay, and it transpires that Roddy Piper's character, whose name is George Nada, and Nada means nothing in Spanish. George, he kind of gets together with a bunch of revolutionaries, and he tries to have a bit of a kind of comeback against this organization that is secretly got its grips on the entire world, seemingly, or certainly in Los Angeles. And no spoilers here, so you'll have to watch the film. So what we have here with They Live are some really good ideas. But it feels like they're on a budget, and you kind of feel like it's a budget, even though it's got, cars, and it's even got cars. It's got a helicopter at one stage. It's like multiple locations, but it just feels like, it's there was a kind of budgetary constraint. My most favorite part, which only lasted a couple of seconds, was when George and his mate find themselves in this kind of essentially this place where the aliens have like control, like total control. It's like they're one of their bases in the city, and they can do traveling through dimensions or through space like instantaneously. And that's a really lovely little scene. And so the kind of humans that are collaborating with the aliens have got these nifty little watches, and you do something with the watch, and you can essentially disappear. So you immediately travel somewhere else. And there's this kind of little spaceport place where a jump room, as some people would call it, where you turn up and you jump somewhere else. So I really like that jump room scene. And they don't call it a jump room. That's from something else. I can't quite remember where that's from. No, I've heard about it a few days ago. Anyway, but it's definitely not one of John Carpenter's best. I'm quite pleased I saw it. I'd say I'd give it about 3 out of 5. It's certainly like, I watched it and it was fine. But at the same time, it's 3 out of 5. 3 out of 5, isn't it? Yeah. Anyway, that is They Live. So we're going to end this enormous episode of Paranormal Blip with a little word on Donald Hoffman. I listened to a podcast, Kurt Diamongel's Theories of Everything, the other day, and I really need to look into Hoffman like properly. But this is a good start, and I'll put a link to it in the podcast from a couple of years ago. But Hoffman speaks in detail about the work that he's doing, and it's super exciting work that he's doing. He meditates for at least 3 hours a day, in that he doesn't make any noise. He's silent for 3 hours a day, and he just kind of attends to thoughts as you do when you meditate, you know. And so I thought that was really interesting that he's got this kind of dedicated meditative practice. It doesn't matter to him whether he's standing up or sitting down or whatever. He doesn't have a particular pose. Doesn't have much of a kind of protocol, except for silence. Now I'm going to put in an article I've found which sums up essentially his ideas. So here we go. Darwin informs us that our senses evolved to keep us alive until we raise kids. But what if selection did more? Could it shape our senses to report truths about objective reality? Yes, it could, but the probability that it does is 0. This is the startling verdict of evolutionary game theory, a mathematical formulation of Darwin's insight. Yes, our senses guide adaptive behavior. No, they are not a window on reality. Then what are they? An adaptive fiction. A helpful metaphor is virtual reality. Suppose you're playing Grand Theft Auto in VR. Seated in your ride, you see a dashboard, steering wheel, and the road ahead. You turn your headset to the right and see a red Ferrari. To the left, you see a green Porsche. In reality, as you play the game, you're toggling millions of voltages each second in an unseen supercomputer. There is no green Porsche in that computer. The Porsche, your dashboard, and all that you see is a fiction that helps you to play GTA. And that's what evolution did for us. Space-time and physical objects are just our VR headset. They let us play the game of life, blissfully ignorant of the nitty-gritty of a reality beyond. So evolution agrees with physics that space-time is not fundamental, but evolution offers a metaphor. Space-time is just a headset by which we interact with an unseen reality. Science, until now, has only studied the contents and format of our headset. It's time for science to remove that headset and venture beyond. Cool, that's a good place to end it, isn't it? And I also was listening to him in conversation with Robert Spira, the kind of spiritual guy, and Spira his ideas are very, very close to Hoffman's, and basically Spira had this really brilliant metaphor. He says, if you look at the snow, you can see the white snow. But if you put your pink tinted sunglasses on, then you're no longer looking at the snow as it actually is, the white snow. You're seeing pink snow. But pink snow doesn't exist. Robert Spira on Google is described as a spiritual leader. He's 63 years old. Wow, Google's got a really nice... Is that a new layout? A new Google layout? Anyway, let's find out about Spira, the essence of non-duality. So there we go. Anyway, it's had a really lovely conversation together, Spira and Hoffman, and see that. So the idea, therefore, is that space-time is not fundamental. Space-time is doomed, as the saying goes. And this isn't Hoffman's original idea. He's picking it up from other people. And in the Spira interview that they did a couple of, I don't know when it was, I think it was quite recently, he acknowledges, the guy that came up with this idea that, space-time is doomed. But what I'm interested in is that, of course, all of parapsychology fits into this idea, and also it's not simulation theory. Okay, the kind of regular simulation theory is that everything is a fiction, like what we live a fiction, and there is a kind of unseen, very much like they live, an unseen controller controlling us. Yep. But if you kind of expand simulation theory out, that unseen controller actually has got someone controlling them. And so all of that kind of fits in the kind of realms of space-time. And Spira and Hoffman are saying space-time is not fundamental. Something is happening with consciousness that is outside of space-time. In fact, space-time is just part of the way that we need to filter data in order to survive, coming back to this idea that the senses are there in order for us to navigate the world, for us to have children, procreate, as the advert says, and they live, So that's the point. The point of our senses is that we can survive in order to have kids. That's what the senses do. The senses do not like give us like the truth or what actually reality is. And in fact, that's, many people say that there's a kind of filtering measurement in place. Well, we know this, we know the kind of things that dogs can hear and the kind of things that certain animals can see and insects can see out of our human scope. We know that our senses only pick up various things in order for us to, pick up someone at a nightclub, and, you can imagine the rest. So there's Hoffman. Very interesting. And that leads me to the end of this episode. So thank you ever so much for listening. And please do follow me on Twitter, Instagram, all the rest of it. I haven't been on Instagram for months. So maybe not Instagram. But if you do want to contact me, Twitter is the best. And I do want to get back into the groove of doing these much more regularly. For a long time, I was doing them every week. I can't promise that. But having said that, I'm fully aware that, I need to do more than once every 2 months, Now, the good news is that I've got the summer holidays coming up in relatively short amount of time, about 6 weeks' time, 7 weeks' time, something like that. And so that would be nice. There'll be a lot more over the summer, a lot more regular over the summer. But certainly between now and then, I do want to do quite a few episodes, hopefully once a week. That's certainly my intention, and my plan is once a week episodes. Anyway, there's your catch up. There's your There You Live. And there's a little bit on Donald Hoffman, who I do want to return to in the future. Thank you ever so much for listening. See you later.